Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. The Ukraine War News Update, first part thereof for the 14th of January 2025. And it's been a pretty crazy night in terms of strikes on Russia. We'll get to that. We'll look first at the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course, and you can find them in the description to the video below. 1,330 is lower than we have seen, just a tad above the arbitrary threshold of 1,300 that I'd previously set as being incredibly high. So it's still over that, but lower than the sort of 1,700s and whatnot that we have seen over the last few weeks. 3 tanks, that's a drop. 11 troop-carrying AFVs, that's a drop. 47 artillery systems, however, is quite a significant increase. That's well over double the daily average, or certainly over the double daily average. 1 multiple launch rocket system, 83 vehicles and fuel tanks is a really significant number, and 1 piece of special equipment. So considerably challenging numbers yet again, although there is some movement either way in some of those categories. We will look, I won't play you this video, but you basically get a huge, I think it's over 20 bodies, but anyway, bodies stacked in a line in this video, and they appear to be North Korean bodies. Another place of concentration of eliminated Russian and North Korean soldiers in the Kursk region is recorded by Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance pilots. About 20 bodies are neatly stacked for further attempts to evacuate them. It's likely that the faces of North Korean soldiers will be burned or disfigured. The Russians are trying their best to hide the losses of the DPRK army, says War Translated. So that is another piece of evidence that the North Koreans are losing significant numbers of troops, and the Russians in general. Now, I reported the other day that an Italian had been captured fighting for the Russians. A little bit more details come out about this. Ukrainian paratroopers captured an Italian mercenary and paedophile. Paratroopers from the 78th Separate Air Assault Regiment took an Italian fighting for the Russian occupiers prisoner near Kupiansk before being sent to the front. He worked in a pizza restaurant and a pizza and Italian restaurant in Samara. The Italian citizen Gianni Cenni had been sentenced to 7 years in prison for sexual violence against a 9-year-old girl. He escaped from Italy and relocated to Russia. This is his second conviction. In 1999, while working as a security guard, he shot and killed a colleague, for which he served almost 10 years in prison. And that's how he's ended up fighting for the Russians. So he was an Italian who had run away from a sentence in Italy to Russia, been working in Russia, then committed another crime, and then was sentenced and convicted and had been probably cleaned out of one of the prisons to go and fight for Russia. Now, a pair of AASM 250 Hammer guided glide bombs, the French guided glide bombs that the Ukrainians are using very effectively. I don't know how many they now have. They originally were being given 50 of these a month, but I think they've used all of them up, and I think the French have now started giving them more, but I don't know to what tune. They are being seen quite a bit at the moment. Here's a strike on a Russian military location in Kursk. You got a big old building there, and it really goes bang. These ham-guided glide bombs are, I mean, it's poor visuals there. The resolution's not great, but these really seem to pack a punch. That basically, the large building complex just absolutely goes down there. I don't really want to play it because I'll get in trouble, but it all collapses, and that's the end of that. Yeah, so devastating effect of those bombs. Now, the Russians, of course, have many, many more of their varieties, but I have a feeling, I don't know the stats, but I get a sense that they're using less of them, and less of their missiles, certainly, and we'll come on to that in a second, because Engel's old depot, or kerosene storage, or whatever, I'm not quite sure, either the same place as it again, or another one right near it, last night, and there are claims that these are affecting the use of bombers. An FSB officer was killed at his office in Russia's Ministry of Defense building. FSB officer Vladimir Feschenko found murdered in a building in central Moscow, according to RIA Novosti. I wonder whether, well, who knows what's going on there. I mean, you could think up all different scenarios where he was actually double agent and he had been found out and had been murdered, or internal disputes, or whatever. Who knows? But an FSB agent has been found murdered. And I found this interesting from Shashank Joshi of The Economist, quoting from, I believe, The Economist here. The article is Russia is being set aflame by hundreds of arson attacks. And I've said for a long time now, watch out, fire will be the weapon of choice going forward in terms of just this war, but also I think terrorism. I think you look at LA, and sadly you can see that fire can be used absolutely horrendously. It is a low cost, low risk form of devastation. You can burn down a mall, as we've seen in Poland, and it's probably quite easy to get away with that. You don't have to set up a bomb. It's not dangerous like that. You don't have to smuggle a bomb that you've made and into wherever. You just need some flammable stuff. Set fire in the right place. Bish bash bosh. And this is being used to great effect in Russia, has been for some time. We've noticed that. I've talked about that. So the sabotage gig economy has this time used by Ukraine against Russia. Says Shashank Joshi, quote, you can get a grandmother to throw a Molotov cocktail into a military office or wherever you want if your price is right. So you've heard that there are these scammers. You've also, I think, seen examples of people just being paid on maybe on the dark web or wherever. Probably not a lot of money, a few $100s, and you can get someone to go and set fire to something. And that is going to be a relatively easy way of causing absolute mayhem in any given country. This, at the moment, it's in Russia. We've seen evidence of this in Ukraine with burning vehicles, and we've seen evidence that Russia's used this around Europe. So yeah, watch out for fire. I think 2025 is going to show you it is going to be the weapon of choice. And it depresses me because I find fire horrific. It's just wanton destruction I do not like it at all. Ukrainian air defense has shot down almost every single one of the 80 Shahed sent into Ukraine last night. 58 was shot down, 21 suppressed by electronic warfare. That makes 79, leaving one of these Shaheds to have probably hit its target. I don't know where. And then the big news is what Ukraine has done to Russia. And I don't think this. It seems to be pretty self-evident that the Ukrainians are indeed using these munitions in a way that we were predicting, especially at this time. In the lead up to the 20th of January in the inauguration, you have got Ukraine turning the screw on Russia, on its economy, on its military industrial complex. Supposedly they've scaled up the production of many of these munitions. We'd heard this and we were just waiting for them to actually use them. And now consistently every night we are seeing huge waves of attacks into Russia. And last night was not only no different, it seemed to have been even more widespread. So lots to show you here. Ukraine is attacking Russia again, said Tim White last night. In the middle of last night, it's like people in a number of regions are reporting explosions, including Kursk, Kaluga, Oriol, Crimea bridges closed, etc., etc. But the biggest strikes appear to come in the Bryansk region, which borders Ukraine. President's office is hinting they have hit military production facilities inside Russia. So that was what it was looking like last night, with various videos, particularly coming from Bryansk. And this was, earlier last night. Chemical plant hit in Bryansk. Techmash plant that produces explosives, part of the Techmash holding, which receives orders from the MOD in Moscow. Russia says everything was shot down in Bryansk, but locals have confirmed the chemical plant was hit. Local government claims a house caught fire from falling debris, and then so on and so forth. And that was going on last night with Tim White. They're reporting on as many places being hit. So we'll look at these then one after the other. At least as far as what we know now, there will be more emerging, I'm sure, as seems to happen most days. So Russian Telegram channels report drone attacks on 12 regions of Russia last night with about 200 drones. Hard to know how many. Different numbers, some saying around 100, some saying 200. Restrictions were imposed on the airports at Kazan, Kaluga, Saratov, Tambov, Penza, Nizhnekamsk and Ulyanovsk, and emergency blackouts were introduced in one of the settlements of Russia's Belgorod region, so Belgorod also targeted. So if you look at this map, these are the places that were targeted. You've got Tatarstan, which is quite far away. That's where the Alabuga facility that makes Shahids is, not that that was targeted last night, but just to let you know, that's over there. Saratov is where the Engels Air Base and those oil depots have been, or kerosene storage facilities have been hit, and might well have been hit again last night. We'll look at that. Tula, Oriol, Bryansk took a large brunt of the attacks last night. Belgorod, just over the border as well. Voronezh, and then Rostov here, that Rostov gets routinely hammered. And the amount of drones that were shot down, as according to the Russians, listed in some of these places. So Rostov 14, Oriol 17, Tula 17, and all these others, no numbers there, but it adds up to 100, maybe 200. So there we go. There's that. Now, Max24 lists places that drones, ATACMS and Storm Shadows have hit during the night. Saratov Oil Refinery, Engels Oil Depot, so that's two places near each other. Bryansk Chemical Plant, Kremny L Plant, Gas Tank in Kazan, Ulgsinsk Plant in Kazan, Tambov, Voronezh regions, Tula, Oriol and Rostov regions, and more. Some huge explosions and fires caught on various videos from various places. It was I think a torrid night for the Russians in what was here. I mean, yeah, significant fires going on in a number of places. Bryansk region, particularly, I think, hard hit. Now, this video, it's a long video, but Tim White has cut it down to a minute here because that's all you can put on Blue Sky. Now, an incredible, I think, scene here as a Russian is walking along. And this is, bear in mind, this is a place where Russians have claimed nothing's got through. But actually, it appears that an incredibly fast-moving missile hits a target here. So first of all, you can hear like it sounds like a moped, but someone's telling me that jet pulse engines do this. Listen to those explosions, and then you can hear the air raid sirens. So then there's a big flash and a massive explosion, and basically you can hear the missile come in. It appears to me, but I don't know, it could just be the flash, that missile was just traveling very, very fast. Anyway, the claim here is that the Russians claim nothing got through, and you can see a missile just absolutely slamming, make a massive explosion. I won't play it anymore, but these are all linked in the video in the description below. So back to Bryansk region now, and a long video from a member of the public who filmed the attack. Although Russia denies the damage except to one house, it's clear that from this that multiple missiles got through and very likely hit a major military target. The chemical plant is probably hit by Ukrainian missiles, and it's in the town of Seltso, about 120 kilometers north of the border with Ukraine. Exilenova Telegram channel shows a rapid expansion of the plant in 2 years from October 2022. Hopefully now it's looking more like 2022 than more recently. So that might well have been heavily targeted. Moving on. Reportedly, says Sergei Sumleny, I'm going to be interviewing him with Jonathan Fink on Thursday, I think. I'm doing a live today, by the way, as well with Jonathan. So check that out. Should be 1 o'clock UK time. Ukrainian Air Force has successfully bombed Russian military plant in Bryansk region. Taste it, Ukrainian Air Force has successfully bombed Russia. It appears, at least from the claim here, that the Ukrainian Air Force was also involved in hammering some of these targets, particularly those closer to the border in Russia, closer to the Ukrainian border. Now, Thierry Smidlin here says there are 3 nearby military depots to where Bryansk was hit last night. Bryansk residents report powerful explosions and seeing a huge fire. Presumably, the strike could have been carried out by ATACMS on the Bryansk chemical plant, named after the 50th anniversary of the USSR in the village of Seltso. And Thierry here says, he points out that there's military facilities here and here and here, and then chemical plants here and here. And that's the one that was just shown in the other map, I believe. that has been enlarged quite a bit. But there are plenty of places around here that could have been hammered. Then, according to Russian Telegram channels, a chemical plant in Bryansk, Russia was hit in the attack. So that could be what we were just looking at. The plant produces industrial explosives and is involved in the disposal of ammunition, according to its website. There are obviously images of this place being hit. So Daniela from Tochny says, strike on the Bryansk chemical plant on 13th of January. News accompanied by a video about a strike on Bryansk chemical plant emerged rapidly. The few videos show explosions in the distance with no sound of drones, and several hits allegedly reported ATACMS. The absence of incoming drones and no air defense is evident. Hits in sequence are followed by larger explosions, indicating a potential ballistic attack. A jet engine noise is heard at the end, possibly caused by noise distortion from the explosions. The plant has been under observation for the last few months for a series of reasons. The first is the expansion activities highlighted in red, which satellite images have captured. This shows a clear change in the landscape with significant clearing there of the trees and whatnot to expand and extend, clearing of the area. Better images allow us to explore the level of refurbishment of the plant. In this case, a few buildings are already finished while a larger one is in the process of being erected. Additionally, throughout the site, trees and foliage are maintained after decades of neglect. This video, realized with low resolution Sentinel-2 images, offers a full view of the site changes since 2022, so you can go and check that all out. Daniela's feed. Understanding the significance of this attack requires knowing what the plant produces. Despite its seemingly generic name, the plant plays a crucial role in the production of war materials. The plant produces explosives and propellant for several systems. The proud technical director, in an interview for the 85 years of the plant, explains how the factory is capable of making missiles for Grad, Tornado, Uragan, and TOS-1 Buratino. But the story does not end here. Propellants for RPG, rocket-propelled grenades, explosive charges, and artillery charges are also produced on site and assembled. With this, there is also a heritage of the production of explosives for gravity bombs, including the FAB guided glide bombs. This leads to the conclusion that the attack was specifically intended to further weaken Russia's capacity to wage war. I mean, especially if this is where they're making or helping to make those FAB or CARB guided glide bombs. Weather prevents a detailed damage assessment, but the high number of explosions and the site's low level of hardening suggests that significant damage to the plant is likely. There you go. Unfortunately, free high resolution, not often, but at least twice a year. The issue is weather, so not only having to pay for these, but also weather can stop you from getting good, clear, high resolution images, or indeed low resolution images. And they also have to pass directly over the site, so you don't always get the satellites, they don't follow exactly the same path. Okay, then other instances, so heavy missile attack against Russian targets in Bryansk, different video footage here. Multiple Telegram channels from different directions document explosions. In one instance, 14 explosions were observed. And that could be hitting an explosives factory, a chemical plant where things are going to go bang. Or could be separate missiles hitting. Here we have Null reports saying locals in Bryansk report smoke coming from the Bryansk Kremny L enterprise, one of the largest suppliers, and this has been hit before, I'm absolutely positive, one of the largest suppliers of military microelectronics. According to them, it was hit by a HIMARS rocket, or as they call it, debris. So there was that. Explosions in many different places in Russia overnight, says Tim White. And before closing the thread last night, the one thing that seemed certain was that a chemical plant in Alexin had been hit. The reliable Telegram channel Astra now says 3 places in Alexin were damaged. So there you go. More on that. This is a chemical plant in the Tula town. It's crucial to the manufacture of explosives in Russia's war. So another chemical plant, but the Alexin thermal power plant and the metalworks, Tula Chermet, also suffered damage according to Astra, possibly from debris. One serviceman was injured. He's saying, and then we have down here, next to Kazan, where a local airport was one of 3 in Russia closed this morning, all presumably due to drone attacks. Ukraine may have hit this plant, Kazan Orgintez, I've seen it spelt different ways. Here, they almost certainly made tanks for the Kremlin's aggression. This explosion was thought to be at the tank plant in Kazan. However, the biggest fire has been geolocated to a Gazprom liquefied gas facility in the Moscow district of Kazan. So, goodness me, I mean, lots and lots going on. Ukrainian drones reportedly attempted to attack the Almateyevsk in Tatarstan, with 2 fixed-wing drones intercepted and destroyed over the city, according to Russian sources. So that's a long way away, that one. Early reports indicate that the drones were targeting the Kalaykino oil pumping station, a major transportation hub for Transneft. This facility plays a critical role in transporting oil from Siberia to central Russia and international markets. Now, this is, by the way, on the back that yesterday Gazprom announced it's going to cut, was it 60% of its employees, of its workforce? Things are looking very, very challenging for the Russians here. And this is massive, and it goes on. Russian Telegram channels report a new drone attack on Engels oil depot and a resulting huge fire there. A closer look at the new fire at Engels oil depot. I mean, that is absolutely massive, and that's either the same one or one that's been burning for 5 days anyway. So Max 24, same footage says a drone attack on Russia continues. This is a pack of different kind of drones, including analogs of the Shaheds and drones that are capable of carrying large mines and some carbs. Wow, and that's according to Nikolaevsky Vanek. I have seen a picture of something that looks very much like a black Shahed drone that the Ukrainians were using, that the Russians took a picture of in midair, so they could have real analogues of the Shaheds there. Last night, sanctions were once again imposed on Engels. The 14th Long Range Aviation Regiment reported that in coordination with other units, they had successfully targeted the infrastructure of the Engels 2 military airfield. So it might not just be oil depots, but it could be the airfield. The airfield serves as a base for the Tu-95 MS and the Tu-160 aircraft, already supposedly hammered, or not hammered, but unable to fly as much because of the hit on the kerosene deposits nearby over the last 5 days. These belong to the 22nd Heavy Bomber Aviation Division, and here fire at Saratov oil refinery, so that's Engels area as well, after a drone attack last night, Russian Telegram channels report. So that's an oil refinery. Wow. So last night was a very significant night. Russian Telegram channels report a fire at Orgsintez, so there's different spelling there, chemical plant at Kazan after the drone attack, produces materials used in making military equipment, weapons and ammunition. Goodness me. So I'm sure we'll hear more as the day goes on, but that appears to have been an insanely successful night for the Ukrainians, and exactly what we've been expected. And what I was saying, that if that's happening every night, if they can afford, like for me, I said this for an awful long time. I've said this, in fact, really early on in the war, like the Ukrainians win the war by attriting the Russians from a distance so that they don't lose any of their troops. How many troops would this destruction have cost the Ukrainians? None. Zero. This is just, let's build a bunch of stuff and throw it as far as we can at the Russians. Strategically. So it does damage to their economy, to their military industrial base, to their capabilities, to their capacities. You know, if this is also happening to command posts and depots, ammunition depots and troop accumulations, then you are getting attrition across all these different domains, right? So it's just a case of building more and more of these missiles and drones. If Ukraine can build as many of these as physically possible and just do this consistently every night, this will cripple Russia. That's what I've been saying they should be doing for a long time. And now they've got themselves, of course, it's easier said than done, right? Oh yeah, just build more of this stuff. It takes years to well, these are new weapons, to learn how to build these new weapons, to do the R&D, to build the facilities, to build them. You know, some of these weapons, when they are utilized by or manufactured by allies, right? That's maybe 6-8 years in development. So they've really expedited this, the Ukrainians. So although I've been like waiting frustratingly for the nights like this to happen, they've actually worked really hard to get to this point as quickly as they have. However, you know, this is really necessary that Ukrainians are able to do this regularly. This isn't just a one-off and then you have to wait another month. Now, they have been doing this every night to some degree for the last few weeks, but it just seems like last night was a particularly successful night in their attacks. And I wonder if we see another, 6 days of this before the inauguration, 6 nights of this, then Russia might be in one heck of a difficult situation when they're forced to the negotiating tables by the Trump administration, or at least, as they attempt to force them to the table. Now, going on to other bits and pieces, as I say, lots more, no doubt, will come out about that today. This is Thierry forwarding this on to me, just giving you a sense of normal Russian people. I want the war to end, she says, and for us to win. What needs to be done for it to end? She's asked. The most important thing is that we win. When we're victorious, the war will end. What is victory? Victory? It's when all those useless people drop dead. Then we'll have victory. What are useless people? Those who are far away. Where? Not in Russia. So, in other words, when all the Ukrainians drop dead, then we'll win the war. Okay, this chap says, we trust Putin, but we need to focus more on our country's economy, just like America's new president has said. We have many, how can I put it, people on low income, and that includes me. But I have to work, and I'm 74. Let's hope Putin fulfills his promise to increase pensions. Maybe they will. Russian people are patient. They stay silent. Yep. The only thing worrying me is what I'm going to put on the table. New Year's Eve, it's my only problem. But sorry, I have to go to work. Bye. So that's her opinion. So maybe younger people less likely to give their forthright opinions like that. But yeah, just a bit of a reminder. Now, going to before we get to the Russian economy, there are further signs of damage caused by anchor dragging found at the bottom of another underwater energy cable, the Nordbalt, connecting Sweden and Lithuania, according to Swedish Defence Minister Carl-Oskar Bolin. That just shows that the Russians have been doing this, all of the Chinese and Russians have been doing this in a number of places, more than we had previously thought. According to the minister, the damage was probably caused by the Chinese Yipeng 3 ship with that Russian captain. On November the 17th to 18th, the Yipeng 3, while dragging its anchor for about 160 kilometers, severed and damaged cables between Sweden and Lithuania, Germany and Finland. Investigators are investigating the incident and believe that the ship did this on purpose, as a captain was recruited by Russian intelligence services. According to CO Bolin, all these incidents may be related to the disconnection of the Baltic states from the Belarusian Russian power grid, BREL, in February. Quote, what the Swedish media is reporting shows that we really cannot believe in coincidences regarding what's happening in the Baltic Sea. We must take these cases of sabotage or attempts of sabotage or attempts to sabotage that infrastructure very seriously. And this shows that a quick NATO reaction is necessary in order to protect the interests of our consumers and our, in essence, entire infrastructure, both the electricity market and price stability. Arnoldas Pikdzirnis, the Deputy Minister of Energy in Lithuania, commented on the incident. So, now onto the Russian economy somewhat. With just a few things to talk about here. More crippling news for Russia and its aviation industry, says Tim White. A low-cost carrier in Dubai has stopped flights to Moscow in the wake of Friday's EU agency warning. And in the last hour, Chinese Southern Airlines has also cancelled all flights to Moscow until March the 30th. And another airline in Russia looks to have bitten the dust. Tulpar Air, based in Kazan, has filed for bankruptcy. The company, who wholly owned by the TAIF Group, operates mainly business and charter flights with a modern fleet of 6 planes and helicopters, but all foreign. That's not looking good there. Banks have begun to refuse preferential loans to Russian farmers, says PS01. Banks in Russia are massively withdrawing from preferential lending programs for farmers and refusing to issue them preferential loans. This is already the second industry after IT that has found itself in such a situation due to the high key rate. The Ministry of Agriculture reported that they will redistribute preferential lending limits among other banks. Business representatives see the reasons in high financial risk for financial organisations due to the risks of unprofitability of the agro-industrial complex. The head of the People's Farmer Association and a member of the ROSNG Expert Council, Oleg Sirota, fears that farmers may not have time to do this by the start of the sowing season. In some regions, according to him, farmers have begun to sell their farms as they see no other way out. This, of course, is not only bad for Russia, this could really affect world food supplies and thus prices. This anonymous source says the Russian internet provider Nodex in St. Petersburg was completely looted and wiped, data exfiltrated, and all backups deleted by the Ukrainian Cyber Alliance. And then we hear, surprisingly, from Tim White, the ruble today lost only 2% value after the weekend revelations of Russia's paper-thin economy. A further sign of the weakening came earlier from the state giant Gazprom, which announced it was axing 60% of its workforce, with likely 2,500 jobs going there. Figures will be disputed. Oh, no, I'm not going to go into that, but that's something else. No, the really big news yesterday about Gazprom, and that's a massive indicator that things are not looking good in Russia for the Russians. And possibly very much connected, although also connected to the demographic catastrophe looming for Russia, but actually arguably for much of the developed world. So when you have very low birth rates, which is what normally happens, the more advanced your economy becomes, the better your education, the better your GDP, the wealthier people are, the more educated they are, have fewer children, and along with that, you get better at looking after your, you've got a better welfare system, your healthcare system is good, and so people survive longer. And so what happens is you start having an inverted triangle, well, it's still a triangle, that you have fewer people being born, needing to look after more older people, and these people at the bottom aren't enough. There aren't enough people to pay enough taxes to support the people up here. And that is a massive crisis that we are all going to go through. I mean, you have a lot of people talk about this a lot, like Peter Zeihan. He's kind of obsessed with this for the right reasons. It's hugely problematic. It's going to happen to China. He talks a lot about China being, with such a massive both sort of economy but population, that is a real disaster looming. Russia has this big time. Ukraine has this. Ukraine has like one of the lowest birth rates and the highest mortality rates, and they have, I mean, it's a bit like that because they have the 18 to 25 then goes in and then goes out, but their birth rates are just absolutely unsustainable for the economy, for society. So what do you do? And then you add that to how capitalism works and the need to have consistent growth. Capitalism doesn't really do very well on stagnation, which means you always need to be growing. So if you don't have growth rates, birth rates to grow your essentially economy, qua population, then you need migration. And this is what many people don't understand, which is, okay, there's one thing to talk about the social cohesion issues and how immigration is a problem culturally, but on the other hand, most economies require immigration for the economy to keep functioning. So if you're going to get rid of all those people in America, like 15 million people, and deport them, that is going to slam the economy. It'll be inflationary, and you need those people. You're going to have a labor shortage, and it's just loads of reasons why that will be inflationary. But essentially, when you are importing in usually young, male, working age people who aren't going to draw on your welfare because they're fit and healthy generally, so they're not going to be, going to hospital and this and that, those people are arguably going to somewhat drive your economy, particularly in your lower skilled jobs and jobs that in more mature economies you don't want to do. Anyway, why am I saying all of this? So Russia is expecting an increase in the number of migrants. According to Rosstat, since the beginning of 2024, the country's population has decreased by 161.9 thousand people. At this same time, migration has compensated for the loss by 67.3%. So almost 2/3 of the lost people have been taken up by migrants, not by sort of birth rate. Birth rates are already factored into that. So that's not enough. They would have lost 162,000 people was it not for the migrants coming in. So if this situation does not change, Russians will gradually be replaced by new citizens. So this is like kind of your great replacement theory, but there's no agency in there. It's like it's economic, and you can argue that's what's going on around the world. People put conspiratorial thinking on this. If ever, so someone like Angela Merkel, some people will claim that part of what drove her to allow so many migrants in when she did back in, when was it, 2015 or whenever it was, a lot of that could well have been the stagnation of the birth rates and needing to grow the economy. So the influx of migrants is expected to double by 2025 to 2027. Welcome H-1B visas. In Russia, you are going to see this in a lot of places. Ukraine is going to have to deal with this. Now, they'll want to get their own citizens back from diaspora communities around the world after the war. They'll be desperate to get Ukrainians back, and I'm sure they'll be putting attractive tax things in place or whatever to try and attract those people back to work in Ukraine. But they need to overcome birth rates. This is why Russia has been saying it's essentially illegal to advance childlessness. So if you have adverts on TV or TV shows or anyone talking about the positivity of having no children, then that is now like extremist ideology, because they know that they need children. So as disgusting as that is, it is trying to address a real problem. Ukraine will have to try and address that problem, and probably many countries, unless we find essentially that's unsustainable, because you can't grow population ad infinitum. So we need to work out ways to have stagnation that is still economically viable. We need to have an alternative to capitalism, essentially, in its present form. We need to be able to deal with not having continual growth, because the world can't maintain that. It can't sustain that, both in terms of resource extraction and human population growth and CO2 emissions, etc., etc. It's not a good set of ingredients. So we need to find an alternative. But, in the meantime, there are countries that are going to be desperate for people, and you will see mass influx of migrants. How will that affect Russia? How will that affect, this is a long-term thing, how will that affect their ability to wage war, their ability to do X, Y, and Z? How will that affect their views on kind of ultra-nationalism that are brewing there, that Vladimir Putin has been utilizing for his own benefit, to get people like Wagner to whip up this sense of us versus them? But if an awful lot of your population ends up being them, then it's very difficult to do that. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in at the end. Interesting there from PS01. Take care, guys, and speak to you soon. Toodle pips.